I'm back for another episode of my Big Sis advice series, and this episode is all about dating, rejection, and liking people, etc. And I feel like with the current state of the world at the moment, dating in particular, just from my observations, not that I'm experiencing this whatsoever, but particularly in like really, really urbanized cities. So maybe a little bit in Dublin, definitely a lot in London, but dating seems to be very commodified. And by that, I mean, obviously the landscape is a lot different to our parents' generation because majority of the dating or the finding people is usually through the apps. With the swiping, it's making it really addictive for people, and then also making those people that you're perceiving as disposable, and you're judging them based off just their looks alone, because I mean, you're just going off initial attraction, I suppose, and the pictures they're putting up rather than the energy that they're bringing in person. I find for myself anyway, I'm attracted to people's like, it's hard to put into words, but it's like the connection that you have between the two of you. It's not really conventional beauty. Like, yes, people can be good looking, but what I find good looking is obviously subjective to other people. And then also, like, if yous get on, and you can't really judge that by a picture on a dating app and swiping left and right. So they've never really worked for me. But outside of that, I know it's very hard to meet people. In these big urbanized cities, it's like everyone is so busy, everyone's working super, super hard to try just survive, and people just want to spend more time with their friends. And then on top of that, people are kind of realizing that you don't really need a relationship for fulfillment or happiness. And I think that idea was sold to us so heavily in the early 2000s and 90s with mainstream media, movies, romance novels. It was like, you will be happy and you will be content if you are in a loving relationship. And one that was portrayed in mainstream media isn't even realistic. It's like, it doesn't show their fighting, it doesn't show their disagreements. Yeah, there's a bit of push and pull, like will they, won't they, but they get a happily ever after it. It doesn't show like the mundane and the like comfort and safety within a long-term relationship. It's only kind of showing like maybe a little bit toxic, maybe a little bit of avoidant relationships with a huge rainbow sparks flying romance at the end of it, which is only good for the purpose of entertainment because it's not good realistically. And divorce rates are obviously skyrocketing, and a lot of, I feel like older, maybe not even older generation, but a lot of people are like, oh, I want a traditional love, I want an old school type of love, I want someone to pursue me the way they did in like the early 1900s, like coming with the early 1900s with the boom box. No, but you know, like buying flowers, courting, it doesn't really seem to be a thing anymore. And I suppose that's because of equality. I suppose it's not like just the man chasing the woman anymore. We've realised that there's a huge wider pool of people that we can choose from. But has that made us greedy? Has us made us think that the grass is greener on the other side? Has it made dating for us as an experience disposable? That's what I'd like to know. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of people would be romanticizing like sort of an old school love when seemingly people would be together for 50 years or more. But at the same time, we have to think of the fact that women weren't allowed their own bank accounts, women weren't allowed to own their own property, women weren't allowed to be seen as single or like be content with being on their own. It was always, they were shamed for doing that. Even still to this day, people are still shamed for not wanting to have children, which I don't understand. It's like we should be encouraging people who don't want to have children to definitely not have children for the sake of the children. But anyway, all this into consideration, I feel like it has made dating a lot more difficult than it might have been pre-social media, pre-dating app era, because you're not given so much choice and options. Because even at that, it does give people like a diluted level of what's out there and the options that are available to them. Whereas on the flips, as well as, I mean, it's a bit complicated because it is also a good thing that people do know what they're worth, what their value is, what exactly they're looking for, because they've been offered all these options and they're hearing other people's stories and like women coming on the internet being like, know your worth and know your value, make sure he's buying you flowers every day and blah blah blah. But it also has it set like unrealistic goals and unrealistic standards for us in terms of dating. And my observations when I lived in London was that it did seem like no one wanted to commit to anything because there are so many options. There was a lot of people that I met, and like I loved all these people, I wasn't saying there's anything wrong with this. There was a lot of people that were in open relationships, a lot of orgies happening, a lot of people in multiple relationships at the same time. Well, it was like consented, obviously. Consented? It it wasn't hidden at all. It was like known that these people were in multiple relationships with multiple different people. And I don't know personally if I would enjoy that. I mean, there are some people that would argue that humans are not naturally monogamous, but I don't know how necessarily true that is. I just know personally, I thought it would be something suited to me. I thought, when I was living in London, I was thinking, open relationship does sound good. And that was more because I was afraid of the commitment. But then once you're in a relationship with someone, I just couldn't find myself being attracted to anybody else outside of that relationship that I was in. So I don't know how true that statement is that humans aren't naturally monogamous. If anyone could give me the facts. I don't know if there are any facts out there about this. Yeah, it's really common, I found, for open relationships to be a thing. And I think it's great, like, especially if you're young, to just experience what you like and what you don't like before you sort of settle down. But I think maybe we're getting to this stage, I don't know, I'm in my late 20s now, we're getting to the stage where it's like, what now after this? Because we can't really all live in a commune together, all having sex with each other. My first date tips. So like the tangible, practical tips that I would give when I was dating. I'm not dating at the moment, but when I was dating, I love doing an activity because I can't do the sitting across from each other. It's just too much pressure. I mean, I can do it. That's not a problem. Like, I can sit in front of someone else and have a conversation for 3 hours. But what I found with those, because I was nervous, I tended to drink a lot faster, and I was using drink as like a crutch to make myself loosen up and to make myself be more open and like more of my authentic self, because the nerves and the inhibitions were going away. But then the negative side of that was, after those few drinks, I would be more inclined to like go home with them, not have a clear answer as to whether I actually liked them or not, because I was drunk. It was kind of just wasting my time and prolonging the period for when it would, prolonging the period of the cutoff point, because I wasn't sure of whether I actually liked the person that they were or not, because I was drinking. If I ended up going home with someone and having sex, and obviously I also have mixed feelings about hookup culture. So in my early 20s, when I was having sex, I never felt like ashamed for it. I never kind of felt like, if I was enjoying the sex, I was like, I don't feel shame for this. I just don't feel ashamed. But then once I had sex with someone after a date that I actually didn't really like that much, and went on more dates, because I find the rejection hard, because I want to give them the best chance possible, even though I kind of know at the back of my head that this isn't going to work or isn't going to go anywhere. And that's when I would feel the shame, is if I didn't really like the person and after I'd been having sex with them. And I don't know if that's because I felt bad for them, or if it was like, I'm putting myself in this situation because I don't have the communication skills to be like, I don't want to do this. So that's why I wouldn't drink now on a first date. I would prefer to do an activity. So that would be like, now you obviously want to be safe, of course, if you're meeting a stranger for the first time. But if in Ireland, it's kind of different. If you're going on a date with someone, you usually have mutual friends, or maybe you've met them before actually, in another capacity. There hasn't been anyone in Dublin or in Ireland that I've been on a date with where I haven't had a mutual friend with them, or like knew them in ages ago. Do you know the kind of way? But if you're meeting up with a stranger, say if you've moved to a new country or whatever and you're going on a date, obviously the top priority is to be safe and to look after yourself and make sure that you're in a public space. So for example, like going to a market on the weekends, going to a flower market, walking around a public park where there's other people, getting a coffee and going for a walk. It's just something to do with the sitting down and going for drinks in the evening that I'm having aversion to now, and it's not something that I would recommend for a first date with someone that you don't know. I spent so much of my early 20s and my whole teenagehood and my early 20s, like, actually, it's so embarrassing, actually wondering, begging people to like me, wondering if they liked me, and crying if they didn't. Really highly sensitive if I got rejected by someone that I liked. Could not handle it whatsoever. It was like the end of the world. I am so unlovable. No one will ever love me. I'm repulsive. And now, once I've kind of stripped away the layers of that, with each breakup, with each rejection, it's kind of like I was getting stronger and stronger and able to handle it more. After I've had a baby and I've kind of grown up a bit more, the criteria that you need to meet to be like, for me to seek a relationship with someone is kind of, I wouldn't say that standards are high in a traditional sense, but it's more like fine-tuned. I mean, like, I was on discount sale for the majority of my dating life, just because I liked the validation and I liked the feeling of being loved. It was like obviously an unfulfillment that I was needing, or a void that I needed to be filled, because I wasn't giving myself that acceptance or validation. So I would try to seek that out in romantic partnerships. And that's how I would end up with people that aren't really that good for me, or aren't really even necessarily, maybe not even good for me, but just like people that I don't even really like, just aren't that good to me. Whereas now I know my worth so much more, and there's less confusion about who I like, which does make it a bit difficult to date, especially if you have a child, obviously, because there's a lot more that goes into it. But I'd be more inclined to like cut someone off after a first date, just because I know for a fact, like, they could say one thing and I'd be like, no, I know for a fact this isn't going to go anywhere. I don't know if there's anything like clear cut that I would have done to get me to this place. I'm sure if I get a little bit more desperate somewhere down the line, I'll probably go on sale again. But just for the moment, I'm so content and fulfilled without needing that in my life, because I'm not looking for the validation or the acceptance or like needing to feel loved, because I'm getting that in different ways. Not even that I love myself that much still, because the odd time I am just like bullying myself or being mean to myself. You're so much more content when you're not seeking that acceptance or love from someone else. And I do think that is what made it sort of difficult for me to date, because I was just dating the wrong people and going for the wrong types of people, which why I wasn't feeling good about it. But I'm going to read some of your tips now that you sent in for first dates. Make sure you have a nice time. Don't worry if they will have a nice time. Someone said, I always just see it as going for drinks with a friend rather than think of it as a date. I still get nervous for like meeting up with friends, because I don't know if it's like, I don't want them to be bored. I think that's what my worst nightmare is, if there's like a silence between us. And I really enjoy silence in the company of people that I love. Like, I love spending time doing things and not necessarily speaking to each other. But when I'm just meeting a person for the first time and I want them to like me, I just want them to be entertained, because my worst nightmare is there to be silence between us and for me to go out loud, oh, you're not enjoying yourself, you're bored and you want to go home. Like, I'm on the brink, I'm so close to doing that. Okay, be yourself and don't put too much pressure on it. Bring your friends, group hang. Someone said hug straight away, it gets rid of the awkwardness sometimes. Do something that forces you to actually talk to each other, i.e. cinema first dates are a no-go. Totally agree. I went on a cinema date now for a second date before, and we were just like talking throughout the thing. Now we ended up being together at the end of it, but that was also too soon to go for a cinema date. For me, cinema dates are like when you're in a relationship with someone and you're, in your tracksuit bottoms getting cozy with each other, when you've run out of things to say. I'd say the first 5 dates you're not going to the cinema yet. Someone said, wear something that makes you feel like your favourite version of you. It's good for the confidence. Someone said, oh, this is interesting, before you ask basic first date questions about each other, take turns guessing each other's. No dinner dates, no, that would be my worst nightmare. Do it on a day that your friend is hanging out nearby so you can leg it if needs be. Don't be afraid to leave if you're not enjoying yourself. As scary as it is, actually be yourself, because they're not it if they don't like the real you. I loved this tip. Chat with a good friend while getting ready so you can laugh and feel like yourself and be hyped up. I think that is perfect. And meet up in person if you can, because you've kind of exercised your social muscles then. You haven't been silent. When you've been at home all day on your own. I used to do this when I was younger, and then you forget what your voice sounds like, so you start going, hello, out loud in the air. The more questions, the better. Just keep the conversations going as much as you can. Now, I might be a psychopath, but I have Googled before questions to ask on a first date. I also have looked this up when I was in relationships and I'd want to get on a deeper level, just because I want to get the most out of my interaction with this either person I love or this person I'm meeting for the first time, and I want to be able to ask the right questions. It's probably something to do with perfectionism, or I do have something wrong with me. But now, if you're in a relationship and you're trying to like date each other and get on a deeper level, if you look up deep questions to ask your boyfriend or girlfriend, it gives you such good options. Otherwise, do the questions to ask on first dates, because sometimes you do get a bit nervous and then you lose everything in your head, like you go blank. Sometimes I'll just go mute, and that's not good for anybody. I'm not being myself. They don't know they don't know the real me. They don't know that I'm a yapper underneath it all. Questions for first dates, the pillars. It's always like friends, family, what are they like? I love asking questions that not necessarily to do with them, but the people that are in their lives, because it's more of a reflection of them. Like, what's your best friend like? What's your mom like, and what's your relationship like with her? What are your siblings like? what jobs did you work? Because it takes sort of now that's a bit more job interviewee, isn't it? But it takes a bit more pressure off the actual person, rather than saying what are your hobbies, because I would get a bit nervous if people were asking me questions about me specifically. But if they were asking questions about like my daughter, my friends, my siblings, that's no problem. My parents, try not to talk about my parents' challenge, level impossible. It's just like going off of things that I know I would be able to talk about if I were asked them. I didn't know how to finish this advice video because honestly I don't even know what advice to give myself. I don't know where I stand in terms of dating. I don't know where I stand in terms of romance or love, but every single day I'm getting closer and closer to wanting a commune for just women and children. But I also don't know if that's like subconscious programming, because my favorite genre of books are ones about cults. Also my favorite documentaries are ones about cults, and my favorite podcast at the moment is literally called Sounds Like a Cult. I do really recommend listening to Sounds Like a Cult, the episode on monogamy. It's really interesting and does make you question yourself a little bit, because it's always something that I've been kind of interested in, ethical non-monogamy, which I talk about in this video already, but it always is something that sparked my interest because I don't know if that's something that could work. And also it's so outside of the norm, I think, is why it's really interesting. I would love to know, just my perception of love has changed so much, I think, since I've had a baby, because I have never experienced the type of love that I do have with my daughter. So it has made me re-question, and it has reframed the idea of love in my head so much in terms of like conditional and unconditional, because I do find that every sort of romantic relationship that I've been in, even my relationship with my parents, has kind of felt conditional in terms of like my behavior, not their behavior. I find it really easy to have unconditional love. I do think it started all with my sisters, because if anyone has sisters, you'll know, well, I suppose there are people out there who do hate their sisters, but I love my sisters so much. And also, like growing up, sisters can fucking kill each other and go through phases of not speaking, say the meanest things to each other, but like will love you regardless of your behavior or who you are. It's like an understanding and acceptance, and that has helped me so much in loving myself. Whereas with the dynamic with my parents has always felt sort of conditional, in the sense that felt like I had to be on good behavior, I had to be a certain way and act a certain way, and it's like they had these pre-existing ideas of the type of person that I was going to be, or they didn't actually see me for who I actually was, and then I felt bad if I let them down or acted out in a different way. Do you know, that kind of way? And then in certain romantic relationships, especially with men, I always felt like I had to look a certain way or be attractive or have sex X amount of times a week in order to be loved. And a lot of times online as well, a romantic love is presented as something that is transactional, and like you need to do, and even friendships as well, especially if it's like, if they wanted, all the sayings that are coming out like without any nuance, if they wanted to, they would. I've put up with enough. Not serving me. The relationship was not serving me anymore. And the wording and the semantics around relationships is really important, because the whole not serving me thing makes me think like people have to wait on you hand and foot, or they have to do something for you in order to be loved, where I've never had that. Maybe sometimes I have, but I've never had that like approach to love before. And maybe that's because I want to be accepted by the people that love me. I just want you to accept me fully for who I am, and I want you to understand me. Do you know, that kind of way? So the acknowledgement that every single person that you'll come in contact with in your life will either have a trait that you don't like or you don't agree with, or they're going to be flawed in some way that maybe doesn't resonate with you. And it's nearly impossible to find someone that is 100% like you, and it's impossible for you to be 100% perfect and have 100% redeemable qualities that someone else is looking for. There's always going to be a downside or a downfall to you or another person. So I don't like the new approach to relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, of like that they're not serving you. If they wanted to, they would, and all this sort of like transactional shit that's going on. I just don't agree with it, and it's not the kind of relationships that I want in my life, and it's kind of worrying me for the future, if that makes sense. Because obviously our thoughts and our behaviors are so heavily influenced. I do think that we don't recognize it enough. I don't either. I definitely don't recognize enough how heavily influenced my thoughts and behaviors are to like the social conversations that are going on at the moment, especially online. Because we think everything is like, it's not that serious. You know, we're swiping up. It could be like a 16-second video, but those things do have an impact on you. Even with my cult reading, my cult books, like for some reason I'm getting attracted to like a cult vibe, and maybe that's my longing for connection and like a sense of community. Families don't have the opportunity or the resources to like live in the same estate anymore. That's like a completely unrealistic expectation that we have because of the way the economy is and the housing crisis. So I think that like longing for community and connection that I'm not going to get within my family, because not because I don't want to, but because it's not possible. I think that's what is making me long for like a sense of community and having a group of people. So I don't know where I stand in terms of, and maybe that's why the ethical non-monogamy thing looks like an attractive thing at the moment, because you can have multiple people at once to love and for you to be loved by. These aren't even dating tips, but these are just the things that go on in my head constantly. I'd love to know other people's thoughts, and thoughts about romantic love and friendship at the moment.